In December, the FIA modified its international sporting code to restrict drivers from making political, religious, or personal remarks without prior approval, causing a big rift between the drivers and the FIA. Which, of course, is not good for the FIA, as they've been in the centre of talks way too much in recent years. So the International Sporting Code for this year includes a provision stating that the general making and display of political, religious, and personal statements or comments, notably in violation of the general principle of neutrality promoted by the FIA under its statutes, would be a violation of the rules, with the caveat that unless previously approved in writing by the FIA for international competitions. Because the move occurred during the winter break, few F1 drivers have publicly commented on the topic thus far. Even though not many drivers have commented on it, the ones that have were far from happy about these changes. In recent years, a number of drivers, like Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, have utilized their race weekend platforms to raise awareness in critical social problems, ranging from Black Lives Matter to ecology. F1 also started its own campaign, We Race as One, in 2020 with driver endorsement. Although it was stated that the FIA was only formalising an already in place procedure, the action was received with criticism, with analogies drawn to FIFA's same clampdown ahead of the World Cup in Qatar. Sebastian Vettel thinks that the F1 drivers can show courage, despite the FIA's decision to restrict drivers from making political, religious, and personal statements. The four-time world champion is the latest high-profile F1 person to criticise the FIA's move to limit driver remarks. Vettel was one of the drivers who utilised his platform in his final F1 years to promote equity and environmental problems. When interviewed about the new FIA regulations during the Race of Champions event, Vettel had the following to say. "Yes, that's a bit of nonsense," Vettel replied. When questioned if he was delighted to be gone from the sport due to the new constraints, he said that the FIA's decision to amend the regulations made no sense to him. "There might have been a bit of trouble then," responded Vettel. Of course, it always depends on what question you are asked and what the topic is, but I think it is absolutely important to take a stand on some issues, and we've seen in recent years that more and more people have taken a stand. It doesn't make much sense for the FIA to go against that now. While Vettel agreed that it would be simple for him to persuade individuals in the F1 paddock to speak out, he hoped that drivers would not be inhibited from standing up for their views. "I'm no longer involved, so of course I can say a lot now," Vettel continued. But of course, I hope that the guys in Formula 1 would continue to have the courage to stand up for their opinion and to express it. Sebastian Vettel wasn't the only one to question the new rules, as many people among the grid had something to say about the matter. Sebastian Vettel, one of the most vocal drivers, stated that he hopes drivers show courage in standing up for and expressing their thoughts. And the drivers seem to just do that. Valtteri Bottas has already expressed his displeasure with the punishment, claiming that the FIA wants to control us and that drivers should have the right to talk about what we want. McLaren CEO Zak Brown backed the FIA's efforts to find the right balance, but Mercedes' Toto Wolff believes that there has to be alignment between the FIA and drivers. Two-time world champion Verstappen believes that the ban is not necessary, but cautions that it is important to get all the facts right before making such statements on the world stage. "Everyone's different, some people are more outspoken than others," he said in a recent interview. "I'm typically not that outspoken of it because, first of all, it's challenging as a racing driver to be totally devoted to that in terms of diving into everything and making sure that you know all the facts. But I don't think it is necessary because you're basically making sure that people aren't allowed to speak anymore, which I think we should be allowed. Some people will speak a bit more, some not. But it, speaking of the ban, was probably a bit unnecessary." Next to being unnecessary, the new rules were confusing for the drivers. After finding the first guidelines somewhat confusing, Albon stated that clarity on the situation was required. "We were very much for We Race as One and all these kinds of situations, and it seems like the FIA was trying to go away from that," Albon said when asked about the clampdown at the launch of Williams' 2023 F1 car on Monday. "So we need to see. It's clear we need to be open in dialogue about what they're trying to do. Of course, we need to be able to speak freely to some extent. I'm sure we're going to get clarity on what really they're trying to say." But Albon felt F1 drivers had a lot of people come to us and look at us as spokespeople for issues around the world, given their reach through fans and the media. "I do feel like it is a responsibility for drivers to make people aware of these kinds of situations," said Albon. "It is a beast. It is hard to, as drivers, to see what they're trying to say. But let's see." Although Albon said he hadn't spoken too much to the grid about the situation, he felt they were all concerned. "I know, you know as well, that between Formula 1 and the FIA, It's trying to get everything together in the same form of communication, he said. At the minute, there's a little bit of confusion. That's all I'm going to say about that. Albon was backed by former team boss Christian Horner on this one. Horner has stated that he would like to enable drivers to speak up if they so want. Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at this, he said, when asked for his views on the restrictions. I think, first of all, sports should never be used as a political tool. And I think that sports, in many ways, is there to obviously entertain, but to also have an element of escapism within it. But certainly, we at Red Bull have never constrained our drivers to not have the freedom of speech either, or the freedom of their opinions, or the ability to speak their minds, because they do have a voice. I think it's a matter of finding a balance, and in the world that we live in today, everybody has a voice, and that shouldn't be suppressed. But of course, it must be done responsibly. So we don't want a load of robots that are without opinion going racing, but like with all these things, there just has to be a sensible balance. Even though everyone seems to be against the new rules, FIA will push them through and will start to monitor it when the season started, as they and their president clearly see no harm in shutting down the drivers. Last month, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem justified the action, saying the governing body's championship should not be used as a platform for private personal agenda, and that the FIA was not shutting any drivers down. Pretty bold to say for someone that's been at the centre of the controversy in recent weeks. Meanwhile, Horner refused to comment on recent scandals involving the FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, indicating that the issue was between the governing body and the F1 organisation. Ben Sulayem enraged F1 by making comments on social media regarding the company's prospective value. I don't really wish to be drawn into comment on a matter that obviously is between the FIA and the commercial rights holder, said Horner. The FIA is a regulatory body of the sport, and they have a tripartite agreement with the teams through the Concord Agreement. But obviously, the commercial aspects, if you like, the marriage is ultimately between Liberty and the FIA. So that's their business and not ours. Asked if Ben Sulayem should apologise for historical comments on a website that surfaced recently, Horner said, "Again, that's not an issue I wish to comment on. I think that anything that needs to be said obviously should be said between the relevant parties." What are your thoughts on these new rules? Did you enjoy seeing some controversy on the grid? Or are you happy to see these political messages get banned? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.